Hi everyone. Um, Happy Monday. And, so this is Tsukuru Force Project True. Those of you who watch this show know that like for the last two episodes, I kind of had a reflection moment because okay, so we started this show the end of February, and so it's been like, let's see, 3 months. Yeah, I kind of had to reflect and kind of go back to the drawing board, like what I wanted to do. So I kind of struggled, to be honest, to a couple of shows, and thank you so much for sticking with me with the show. So this show was inspired by my own coming out as a transgender person, and starting transition at age 50 last July. So I just hit the 306th day since the start of my transition. Very happy about that, and yeah. So um, this show is to really to create a space for transgender non-binary folks to take up space and um, speak about our own experiences, own stories. Yeah, so that's what we are doing here. And so before I introduce our wonderful guest today, I just wanted to say, okay, so this is Memorial Day. And again, some of you know that I'm an associate member of Veterans for Peace. I'm not. I better. Obviously, I'm not a veteran. I became a citizen of this country now 3 years ago, I guess, during the Trump administration. Wanting to get involved in politics more, and wanting to have a say in where this country was going. So, but peace and anti-nuke activism has been dear to my heart because I grew up in Hiroshima, went to school where 350 students were killed on August 6th, 1945. And I know a lot of veterans because I work with them, and I consider them to be my strongest allies in the peace movement. And I just wanted to acknowledge, like, one of my friends who is a Vietnam vet. He fought in the Vietnam War. Exposed to Agent Orange, came back. He and his wife had a baby. His son was born with heart defects, so he died at age 3. So I just read his Facebook post today. He went to his son's grave today. So that's what Memorial Day for me. So that's where I am at right now. So I just wanted to acknowledge, the victims of senseless wars that we fight. Um, yeah, I don't even want to use the word sacrifices because I hate that word. Yeah, victims. Yeah. So anyway, so Aidan is my guest tonight, and I'm just really excited. Yeah, he is. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They are.
It
The
happens.
Yeah, I make mistakes too. Yeah, they. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna. Well, I was gonna make an excuse. Because I'm not a native speaker of English, and that's kind of like that's part of the difficulty, but no excuse. Okay, so they are former mayoral candidate for city of Berkeley, and that's actually kind of special too because I lived in the Bay Area part of my life too for 6 years when I was going to school in San Francisco. So yeah, welcome, Aidan. Thank you for
Hi.
joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah. So as I said, I know you've been like a lifelong organizer as well. And I have a huge respect for people like you because I really believe in people who really do the work on the ground. Uh, that's who I want to send to the political offices.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never been really about politics for me. I studied it in my school. When I got my bachelor's, I came to UC Berkeley to study political science. And, I'm 28 right now, almost 29. And so it seems very like all the lessons that I've learned, I've have to apply it in real time. Uh, Back in 2016, that's when Donald Trump tried to come to UC Berkeley. And I was a student there. And he did this thing where he tried to make an executive order to allow free speech on campus. And so we had to deal with a bunch of right-wing malicious type of people. You had Ben Shapiro, who was, kind of being paid to come to UC Berkeley to give a speech to talk negatively about trans people and to deny our existence, and didn't even allow us to have a conversation. But, a bunch of conservative students wanted to support him and get that propaganda out. Milo Yiannopoulos, who luckily has fallen by the wayside, he came in and he did, his quote unquote FAGGOT tour, which is what he called it. And he went across college campuses across the United States that are known to be liberal. And he had this propaganda coming out where he wanted to put undocumented people on front display in front of his audience. And he was using queer rights to symbolize that he should be able to do this under free speech. But, we shut him down. and
Right.
ever since then, when Ann Coulter came in, I was always there with the group, the crowd, to really say, no, you can't do this on our public campus. We don't want the militarization that comes with your propaganda campaign. We don't want to be used that way. Why can't you just use your own platform? Why do you have to use ours? And it's constantly and negatively affecting queer people, because when those people come out with these ideas, I mean, if you look up non-binary right now on YouTube, some of the first videos are Ben Shapiro, like talking negatively. And, it's like the science is in Ben Shapiro. People have always been non-binary and transgender throughout history. We have the archaeology, we have the cultural relevance, and the binary that we exist under is based off of Western imperialism. Even the language itself, like we don't all speak English. We don't all have those like masculine and feminine pronouns. Some of our cultures are different, but we don't get to say those things because the audience is so committed to this narrative about people who aren't even on the gender spectrum, who are cis heterosexual men. And those men somehow have it in them to use their thoughts and ideas and to sell them as truth, instead of actually talking to the people who experience these things, and the scientists who are able to look across the vast array of human existence and know that there is something else. And so I'm just happy to be here and give representation to the trans and queer community. And I think you're right. I am a lifelong activist, and most recently a political activist, but activism nonetheless. And once the ballots close, I'm still right there with the people. And I let them know that, no, I'm challenging these people every single way. Politics is one avenue to do that, but the challenge is the consistency to always be willing to fight back, to be willing to take up over the streets, to demand justice, demand accessibility, demand just the ability for us to speak openly without being trolled. So thank you for making this space available for us.
No, thank you. And I mean, like, okay, so jumping in, writing, I'm these days, like, naturally, what's top of my mind is how our rights are being attacked. And I mean, okay, so everyone, but like, transgender, non-binary rights are, like under attack, like they have never been. So that's like top of my mind. But so like, okay, so if I may talk about a little bit about what I'm working on right now, I'm actually working on doing organizing queer liberation march, actually
Yay.
as a protest to a corporate sponsored pride marches, right? So I'm organizing that actually in the July 4th weekend in LA.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So, but what really is inspiring to me is we are, me and the team are reaching out to like not necessarily a queer organizations, like other community organizations as well, because I think we see this as an opportunity, for all like marginalized people to come together, not of course in support of LGBTQIA plus rights, but like rights for all people and liberation for all. And I think July 4th weekend is perfect to do that, because it's like it's questioning like what the patriotism means, and what it's like taking
Yeah.
back the power, from just a few handful of people and corporations, who really, I mean, United States politics is really, really, really not for the people. It's like for the corporations, at this point. So
Yeah, exactly. I think
yeah.
something that radicalized me was back in 2018. Like we had our pride marches, but on June 24th of that year, Catalina Christina James, she was a 24-year-old transgender woman who was murdered in Jacksonville, Florida. And, like corporate pride didn't have outrage. They weren't upset about how trans women were being murdered. They continued their parades and floats. The queer community in San Francisco still had their rallies. And I felt like it was enough. I felt like that was the tipping point for me, because you have all of these people who are simply trying to live their lives, facing gender-based violence, when we should really have more things to protect them. And, conservatives nowadays, they call us like the alphabet mafia or alphabet warriors. But the reality is that we're trying to protect everyone's rights.
Yeah.
LGBTQ is just the beginning of LGBT rights. We have to protect intersex people who, from the very beginning at birth, they're the ones that are medically castrated. And when they grow up, they're unsure about what type of gender or sexuality that they're supposed to have, because they've been violated from the beginning. We have to make sure that polyamorous couples have rights, the right to marry, the right to be able to see their family members who are sick, the right to be able to give an inheritance to their child if they, for some reason, show up dead, which is something that, because we have to have marriage between a man and a woman, even if it's two women and a man, they still don't get the same rights and same treatment according to our legal system. And, asexual rights are at the forefront of it too. Like, people shouldn't
Right.
have to feel compelled to have sex with another person in order to live a safe and well-meaning life. So we have to make sure that people who want to be either companionless or not sexually active and not have kids, and even those who are aromantic, are given benefits. And lastly, for right now, I just want to mention that, like a lot of the feedback, the pushback that we're getting, the people that hate the alphabet mafia, and I'm just using that phrase to cite the ridiculousness of their
Right. I know.
thinking.
Yeah, it makes me laugh actually, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I like
Right.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
that's funny actually. But
if they were truly pro-life, they would be pro-kids and making sure that kids who are queer are protected, not kicked out of their homes,
right.
always having community around them, that gay couples are able to adopt these kids. Because right now we're seeing a lot of pro-birthing as far as Roe v. Wade is concerned, and really trying to take over women's bodies, but we know that they're trying to take over everyone's bodies.
Right.
But the reality is that they want kids to be existing, but they don't want to support kids who are gay. And so if they don't even allow kids to explore their sexualities and their gender and really try to understand themselves, because at the end of the day, it's about us learning to love our bodies that we're in, and to know that how we feel is real. And there's science to back up our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't
Right.
even come to those terms where we protect the next generation from STDs, HIV and AIDS, drug use, and especially in the gay community, intravenous drug use, methamphetamines, if we can't try to help people in our communities get away from those things and live
Mm-hmm.
full and healthy lives, then we're just not doing it enough. And to go back to your point about corporate pride, we have to acknowledge that they're not doing enough, because every single time that someone is out there, when it's not June and we're not
Mm-hmm.
trying to get them into recovery options or in a safe place for foster youth who are gay to be around, we're failing them. Essentially, we're saying that their life is not important when we should
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
celebrate everyone's uniqueness.
Right, right. Yeah, thank you, Aidan. There are so many
Sorry.
thoughts going through my
Sorry.
mind right now. I can't even keep it straight, and no pun intended there. But um, yeah, so thank you really for mentioning, all these things. Okay, so I have like three things I want to say. One is, yeah, okay. So what drives me crazy is these like pro-life people. If you're pro-life, you are right. I mean, be consistent. Be consistent about being pro-life. If you're pro-life, you should be protecting people on the street, right? I mean, nobody
Mhm.
should have to live on the street. First of all, housing should be provided to all people, and healthcare should be provided to all people too. And they can't claim like pro-life, without providing all these things to people, because
Yeah,
they are
exactly.
really actually people dying every day. Lack of healthcare, lack of housing. So I mean, if you're pro-life, yeah,
But
we
we know
should
they're not
create.
pro-life.
Right, exactly, right. I mean, you can't pick and choose like whose life you are supporting and whose life you're not. That's not pro-life. um
Yeah.
and also, okay, so housing. Oh, no, wait. Before I go to housing, thank you also for mentioning about like asexual, aromantic folks too, because that's actually one of the things that really I'm for lack of a better word, I don't want to say passionate about, because it's kind of weird, but um yeah, I think their rights, the dignity for asexual, aromantic people, uh I don't think it's talked about enough. And I actually like
Mhm.
many years ago, when I was identifying myself as lesbian, um I watched this documentary about asexual and aromantic people, and one of the scenes, the documentarian goes to the Pride. I don't remember which city. It might have been San Francisco actually, but one of the major cities. They went to Pride, and they interviewed some people, like some gay men, and then all these people saying stuff like, "Oh, I don't understand these people. Like, why?" You know, essentially, they are just like really dissing aromantic, asexual people, saying that, "Oh,
Mhm.
it's not natural. If you are human being, you should have like natural attraction and a natural drive to have sex." And I was like, I was shocked because
Yeah.
we as LGBTQIA community, I mean, we should be the ones to protect all, rights for all people, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
regardless of who they are. I mean, we should be the champion of human rights, you
We
know.
really should. Something I'm learning, because I try to do intergenerational work when it comes to the queer community. A lot of people are coming out of the HIV/AIDS scare, and someone said pro-life means all life, all inclusive. Yeah, you're right. But people were really afraid to have sex back then. They were really afraid to make human contact, and it's like, especially these gay men who go their entire lives not knowing if they're going to be able to marry or have someone to love. There becomes this emphasis claiming sexuality, and it's the fault of the queer community for stopping just there. We should have been able to say, the people who don't want that sexuality are just as equally valid with us. back in the 90s, people were afraid of the term bisexual. It was really you're either gay or you're straight or nothing. And people didn't really understand that no, you can have sex is multidimensional. And I go back to the scientific consensus because ovaries and testes are made up of the same components. It's the hormones that really change the designations in utero. And people are allowed to feel attraction or non-attraction to whatever they see as their drive. Some people have sex drives, some people have high sex drives. It doesn't really matter as far as our community is concerned. What makes us unique is that we're not in the cis hetero camp. Like, we don't want only missionary with a bed sheet between us, and if that's their thing, that's their thing, right? But outside of that, people exist on the spectrum of how we relate to each other and our bodies. But when you see that cis heteronormative framework, it's really about how everyone's body is derived because of their labor. So first, you give your body to labor. Second, you give your body to continuing that labor, which is through sexual reproduction. And that's just a myth that I hope in this time we're going to break, because we should have the freedom of expression, the freedom of leisure and recreation. And that means people have consenting sexual or non-sexual relationships. And so I don't understand why there's such an emphasis on sexuality, when in reality, what we're trying to do is control our own bodies, period. We just want our own bodies. And if we give our labor, and sex work is completely valid, right? If we give our labor, that has nothing to do with what we feel inside, who we're actually attracted to, and where we want our bodies to go from then. So yeah. It was really hard back in 2018 because, trans rights was just coming into the forefront. You had Caitlyn Jenner, who was probably one of the first public officials to really make that transition from like who they were before to who they are now, regardless of whether Caitlyn's conservative or not. She did put herself at the forefront of that situation, and there's a lot of blowback. Like, I remember in Arkansas, the bathroom bills were happening in high school, so like people weren't able to pee unless they showed like, this is my ID card, this is what I was born with, can I go to the restroom? And sure, in California, we just changed the markers from men and women to all inclusive, just use whatever restroom. But that's not the case everywhere else. And people really fear for their lives just being able to use public resources. So, it's like, I guess cis people are either unaware or unconcerned of the minor inconveniences we all have to go through, the code switching that we all have to go through, and that's why we kind of have to continue to build solidarity amongst ourselves. Like, a lot of the queer community is trash, and we just have to say that. Like, they have the whole no fats, no femmes type of movement, and that's just trash. But outside of that, we have each other, where we can see each other for who we are. We understand the intersectionality of all our differences and the discrimination we face. And we really just have to continue building solidarity until we get what we want. And what we want is freedom and nothing less. So.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And well said. God, yeah. You speak very, very well. I mean,
well, if I was elected right there, like in all the forefronts, I'd be using my platform to get into Ben Shapiro's face and Charleston Tucker. I'd just do it. Whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. No, no, it's time for us to be bold. That's for sure. We need that boldness, courage to just speak up. I just believe that. And I just actually kind of wanted to, because you mentioned you just came from helping someone to move their camp, and so there's this site. I live in LA, and in Little Tokyo, or
Mm,
I should say there was an encampment,
mm.
but there was a sweep about 3 4 months ago, I think. And all this time, I actually Little Tokyo is a little bit far away from where I live, and I don't have a car. So, and especially during COVID time, I did not go to Little Tokyo. And recently, 2 weeks ago, so I went because I had some business there, and
Yeah.
that where where there was an encampment was where I used to do a memorial for the Hiroshima Day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is public square, where a lot of people gathered, used to gather and do their stuff, including houseless people. So
Hmm.
anyway, but I went there and I was shocked because like everything was like fenced off. I mean, there was like a metal fence all around this public square.
Yeah.
Of course, like nobody was there. I mean, nobody. I mean, because as I said, there was metal fence all around this public square, and I was like so shocked because it's like, what for? It was, it is a public square. It is like anyone is allowed, anyone was allowed to be there,
Uh-huh.
and now nobody's there. Nobody's allowed to be there. I guess it was just I was shocked because of the ridiculousness and cruelty of it. People were not bothering anyone there by being there. They were just living there. And
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to people who are homeless, one thing that I think is missing from the conversation is that literally every month there's someone whose lease has ended, and either or they can't make rent, or regardless, every month there are people who go to the streets. So the issue with homelessness is that it's consistent and continual. People are constantly becoming housed and unhoused at the same time. And so there's no real way to track how much homelessness is going to occur. But with the increase in costs, especially since COVID-19, it's like we've been fighting for this $15 minimum wage. Well, that left us like 10 years ago. Now we're at the
right.
$22 minimum wage. So the fact that even for a person who is unable to
Oh, I hope he comes back. I hope they come back. Oh, okay. Hold on. Hi.
Hi. Sorry,
All
I'm
right.
getting internet issues, but I'm back.
That's okay. Let's see.
Can you see
Okay.
me?
Yep, I do.
Okay, great.
So you were
So
saying,
where was I?
um,
Yeah,
you-
well, when it comes to homelessness, people are constantly being newly unhoused.
mm,
There are a number of people who are couch surfing, and so we can't even truly document the amount of unhoused people in each area. But what we know is that, especially during summer months, people like to come to California. Why? Because they're not going to be out in the cold and freezing. Um, and so when we look at LA and the Bay Area, there's going to be a high concentration of homeless people. But
mhm,
something that we saw in Berkeley specifically is that we had a group of people who formed a movement surrounding public space. So they were called, first they came for the homeless, and they went and they camped on City Hall.
mm,
At the time, the city had violently evicted them from the area. And so they went to the Berkeley post office. The post office was also at risk of being uh, removed and privatized. And so they put a fence around the post office to keep people from being able to sit there. What we
mm,
try to I mean, the people on the left who are interested in city planning, we say this is hostile architecture, and
mm,
so it's city infrastructure that's specifically designed um, to stop encouraging people from using it. And so when you see a bench for a bus stop that now has a
Mhm.
divider in between them.
Yep.
That's architecture that's specifically meant to stop homeless people from being there. They're doing
Mm.
the same thing in front of buildings, putting little spikes in front of them. They
Yep.
say it's for pigeons, but really it's for people from sleeping there. The problem is that, you know, it's like since the housing crisis, we just haven't been filling up the amount of units that are available. Why? Because of the cost. And in
Mhm.
Berkeley, right now, I just did the research. The average rental cost is about $3,000 and 100 a month.
Wow.
So unless you live with another person, there's no
Mhm.
way you can have one job, a full-time minimum wage job, and still be able to make the rent in Berkeley. You'd come
Mhm.
about $400 short. So
Mhm.
of course there's going to be homeless people. There's no way for people to actually get into housing. And the
Right.
response that we see from cities across California is that we need more housing. Um, since the 2020 census, and I think the census is really going to change people's ideas about the housing crisis. We
Mhm.
learned in Berkeley there's about 4,700 vacant units, and there's only
Mhm.
1,000 people who go to sleep without a roof in Berkeley, according to their statistics. So there's at least 4 housing for every unhoused person in the city of
Mhm.
Berkeley right now,
Mhm.
May 30th, 2022, that can be occupied theoretically, and we can eliminate homelessness right now.
Right.
Your city instead is like, no, we need more public-private partnerships. Let's go 100% affordable housing. Well, affordable
Mhm.
housing is 1/3 the income of the average resident in Berkeley. So essentially, you would need to make more than the minimum wage in order to be accessible for that
Mhm.
affordable housing if you don't have a Section 8 voucher. So unless people, and just to put it briefly, unless people go through hurdles and hoops and constantly are able to talk with their case managers if they have them, there's no
Mhm.
way people who live in Berkeley can even move to another area, another apartment. They're stuck where they are. And when it comes to disabled communities, especially if they have rent control, they do not want to give up their unit because that's the
Right.
only thing they have. They're paying $800. And if they were forced to move, they would have to pay $3,000 as the
Mhm.
difference. And I
Mhm.
think this is something that's under talked about in the cities, in the Bay Area and all of California, is that
Mhm.
the crisis isn't about the lack of housing as it is right now. It's
Mhm.
about the lack of priority in the public sector, the advancement of public housing where the city owns those buildings and we just
Mhm.
export them to these companies um, and those companies have multiple buildings within the city. And so, unless we do vacancy taxes, unless we take back those units, and
Mhm.
then we actually market them down to be in an actual affordable range, which is $800 or less, let's just go for rent, right? But
Right.
realistically, realistically, like let's mark them down $800
Mhm.
for one person. So if you have a
Mhm.
double, then that's 1,600. Um,
Mhm.
but that's, it's like we're in Berkeley, we're right next to UC Berkeley too. And so they mark up their prices. And so a dorm
Right.
is about 1,700. And so is it really better to go into the private market to get a shared double in a studio apartment for 1,700 or a dorm by UC Berkeley? And, if
Mhm.
UC Berkeley lowered its costs, then they can make the argument that we need more housing. But the way it is
Mhm.
right now, you might as well just stick 5 people into an apartment like they did right next door before they all moved out to my apartment. There was 5 people in there, and then it's
Mhm.
affordable. But
Right.
all this to say is that no, it doesn't work for anyone, and so
Mhm.
it's easier to put your tent outside. Because you don't have to pay utilities, you get access to clean air. If you're in
Mhm.
like if you're lucky enough to get in a neighborhood like in mine right here, you get to be under redwood trees, you get to camp in the hills. Of
Mhm.
course,
Mhm.
people would want to prefer those options than to have to work multiple jobs just to barely make rent.
Right. Right. Yeah,
And
I
I think this is
totally
something
can
that's happening in
relate.
LA too.
Yeah. 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 It's. I think the. I mean, as you already mentioned, and I'm sure as you already know, I mean, the problem is the same in San Francisco, cities like San Francisco and LA. We have actually empty, houses. Like, so it's not the it's not the lack of like housing itself, you know, as you said, it's just lack of priority. Yeah, so you are 100% right. And you know, I actually think started thinking about this a lot, like ever since I lost my job.
Mm-hmm.
Because okay, so I'll be honest, I live here in this condominium because of my friend right now who had to temporarily go back to Japan.
Mm.
So I'm actually paying like really well, surprisingly like minuscule amount of rent. I mean, based on the average rent in LA. I mean, so the point is, like, I would have been on the street right now if it wasn't for this place and if it wasn't for my friend, you know, who kindly like gave me this place to live. Because I have, I mean, with the money that I make right now, there's like no way I can pay the rent
Mm-hmm.
in LA.
And I don't
Um,
blame you. I just looked it up. The average is $2,500 a month. A
yep.
month.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
don't blame you at all. And I'm happy that you got that accommodation. A lot of people, there's a lot more people in the same situation as you. It might not feel like it, but a lot of people are um, basically covering for their other friends who go out. Subletting is what we call it.
Right.
And it requires connections, and for a lot of queer and trans people, it's hard to get those connections because a lot of times the friends that we have are also queer and trans and low income, as a result. And
Hmm.
so you see, or they have to move into situations that are not they're not comfortable with. When
Right. Right.
Before I got my apartment in Berkeley, I was like trying to find people to live with because I wasn't able to pay first and last month's rent with the security deposit and having a great credit score. And so I was trying to work it that way. And a lot of the people that I felt like could be comfortable with, they were like, we only want women to come into the apartment. And I was like, but I'm
Mhm.
a trans person. Like, is that okay? And they're like, no, just biological women. I would really get those answers. And so I would be forced into looking for rental properties with men. And some of
Mhm.
those just happened to be frat houses. And I was like, no, I'm not really comfortable going to a
Right.
frat house while I'm trying to understand who I am and recover from the situations that I've been going through. And
Mhm.
so, yeah,
Mhm.
we see a disproportionate amount of trans people, especially going into the streets. It's not fair. It's not right. We should
Right.
all be able to get these accommodations and be able to live by ourselves if we wanted to. But, the lawmakers that are here, even right now, isn't the eviction moratorium for California up in like June
Yep.
1st?
Yep.
And they
Mhm.
keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and it's like, there's going to be so many more unhoused people if we just don't abolish the rents right now, or if we don't
Yeah.
cap the rents as a maximum. And,
Mhm.
for my opinion, it starts with the city or a land trust, a nonprofit, being able to buy those properties outright so they're
Mhm.
affordable forever. Because the way we have it right now is just these companies are not realistically looking for who in the city can pay these things so they can stay in the city. They're looking to have a return on investment. And that
Yep.
return on investment means gentrification for all of us. And
Mhm.
if you're a property owner, it seems really good. Why not just move this person in who's willing to pay
Right.
$3,100
Mhm.
versus the person that's been there for 14 years and they've ruined the rug and it's like
Mhm.
I have to
Mhm.
deal with their complaints. Why not just have this new person and then they're here on my terms? So it's very convenient for property owners to increase the rents, especially if they don't live in the city in which they're marketing that property from. And I just want to emphasize that there are so many
Mhm.
property owners that don't even live in the cities which they own properties. And
Mhm.
of course, I'm talking about corporations, but
Yeah.
the fact that these people control shelter, which is fundamentally a human right in a liberal, quote unquote, state like California, is an
Mhm.
issue. And,
Yep.
if the right of the world, if the right wanted to get on California, talk about that. Talk about how lawmakers like Gavin Newsom would rather invest in his winery companies at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic instead of
Mhm.
actually buying blocks of city properties and giving them back to people or nonprofits or converting them into land trusts. And again, I just want to emphasize, it's like I just graduated from UC Berkeley this summer with a bachelor's, but all of these politicians that are in office have bachelor's or master's degrees, mostly in law or in city planning. And so it's like I'm just barely accumulating this information. It's been out for decades. But yet these people, they don't feel like they have to do the work necessary that their job allowed. Their job is supposed to be doing. We're supposed to protect the American citizens from these predatory lenders, but they get their campaign dollars from them. So
right. That's why they don't work for us. They work for corporations and they're donors. So what I wanted to say, I was like thinking about something while you were talking, but I was so engrossed in like listening to you. I just kind of like lost the train of my thought. But I just I think what I was thinking though, you are absolutely right about transgender folks, trans and non-binary folks. We have a huge problem with housing and a really high rate of poverty in our community. And I don't know. I mean, it has become like really apparent to me ever since I came out and like reach out and talking to a lot of transgender non-binary folks that our community is really, really hurting. We are hurting a lot. And did I lose you? All right. Let me just bring them back. Hold on. Let's see. Okay. There you are.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No. Please do not apologize. But so one is, obviously housing. I mean, I hear from so many people that they're struggling to pay rent. And there's like
hold on 1 second. I'm gonna turn my cam if I can hear you better. Let's see.
All right. So there's no social programs that they can utilize. They can get help from. So we are kind of like doing private personal mutual aid on our own. And so and another issue that I hear a lot from our community is like medical care. There's really lack of care in our community, and that really, so that's like one of the reasons like really drives me to advocate for a single payer Medicare for all program. I think another thing that we in California is actually another crisis that we are facing is that not only the housing moratorium, like rent moratorium, the federal program for healthcare is ending. So that potentially, will create like millions of people, losing access to healthcare. I actually may be one of these people, but I don't know yet. Yeah, I feel like something's really gotta give, or in other words, like we really have to be on the street, asking for like demanding change right now.
Yeah. When it comes to healthcare, I think a lot of people, since Obamacare, the Medi-Cal came out, felt like that was the first time people felt that healthcare was something accessible to them. I know a lot of people who go around with dental pain, for example, still to this day, and they feel like, oh, I can't get an appointment, it's going to cost a lot of money up front. I don't have insurance, or they're unaware that they have insurance. And so they go around with pain or with dental diseases because they're afraid of the potential cost of healthcare options.
Right.
In Berkeley, we're lucky enough to be able to have nonprofits and local clinics provide expertise to take care of people as far as chiropractic, vision, mental health care, dental care. But the fact that the people who need service have to go through these hoops or to find the place, it just means that so many people go without service. So happening at the federal level, it really sucks because, well, it sucks because people, one, there's this stigma against using government resources for healthcare. And the stigma really goes to like, it's okay to use government resources for war, but when it comes to protecting people within our own communities, that's a no-go. So there's a constant pressure to defund Social Security, which is retirement for people, and any disability checks. The food stamps is constantly under threat of defunding. And, you know, from a public health perspective, all of these things prevent people from having to use healthcare options such as hospitalizations, rooms. Then we have the COVID-19 pandemic, which puts an extra pressure because now hospitals become a vector or a hotbed of potential outbreaks. And so you see nurses having to go with longer hours, with limited benefits and pay, without the ability to see their families for extended periods of time. And that's an unsustainable model. So how do we go around that? Well, to me, the answer is direct low-cost investments into the nonprofit sector that provide healthcare options to make them easily accessible for people. The second thing is, like in Berkeley, you know, we only have one hospital, which is Alta Bates, and they have like 2 emergency rooms. So we're very lucky we haven't had a COVID-19 outbreak in Berkeley. We have a Kaiser that's coming in, but Kaiser only takes a certain percentage of people without charging them outright. And you know, that's not fair because in this area specifically, we're more at risk for wildfires. We're more at risk for a natural disaster like an earthquake.
Right.
And when you have these beds already filled with, you know, basic things like people getting in car accidents or you know, like those who need emergency care because they have a heat related illness. Like the fact that we are barely able to take care of the people in those situations, let alone not prepared for when an actual disaster happens, you can tell that, okay, we haven't been funding healthcare appropriately in the past. So that's why I think the solution lies in the nonprofit sector. And it's because they're able to provide low cost services outside of the Berkeley or outside.
Okay.
That's the term.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think, and you know, we have the debt ceiling at the federal level, and so federal government doesn't even have money to spend. So putting our resources now into local public health outcomes is important. In Berkeley right now, one of my public healthcare outcomes is really protecting our tree canopies. So for whatever reason, the city government is really in favor of destroying a public park to make quote unquote affordable housing. Well, you know, in summer, when people are out there, these redwoods that would essentially be cut down, they are public health care. They allow people an opportunity to rest, to cool down.
Yeah.
People with families are able to like get away from city streets. You know, the more cars we have out there, the more carbon emissions that are kicked up, the more dust is going out there, and that's a consequence of our construction and constant building too, is that we don't have places where people can just relax. But you know, the city council unanimously voted to cut down all of these trees, all of these fruits and vegetables that we've been growing, a community overly dense district.
Wow.
And I agree with the comment, like there's always money for war, there's always money for displacement, there's always money for police, especially when it comes to evicting people. You have
God.
enough money to evict people, but how much time is it going to take us to realize we have to have direct investments into the resources we have now? Like we have a Berkeley free clinic here that's been around for 50 years, and they're still struggling to get funding. You would think that anyone who represents this district would see it's an invaluable resource for the community. It should be
Right.
expanded. They should have services every day in the town center. But instead, they're more concerned with continual development. And that development, which is not supported by the people that they claim to represent. It's supported by people who are not directly affected by it.
Right. Right.
And again, I just see this happening everywhere. It's something that is a systemic issue. It's not localized to Berkeley. It's throughout California and probably throughout the entire United States, but mostly in the coastal cities. Do you see it exacerbated this much, this quickly?
Yeah, wow. I actually didn't know that. Okay, so it's really shocking to me, and we are approaching the end of the program, so I have to give you some time to talk about call to action item. But I just want to say, like, I was like shocked to hear the of all places, the city of Berkeley. I mean, voting to cut down trees. Oh my God! I just can't imagine that. That's terrible. I hope Aidan comes back. Yeah. So I mean, as we look at situations in California, actually, we are not that liberal. What's happening here? San Francisco, Berkeley, LA. It's just shocking. Wow. Okay. So until Aidan comes back, I just wanna give people shout out. Yeah, hi Dolores, hi JT, hi Amber, hi Sandy. I was just giving shout out to people. Hi, Bostad Environmental Coffee House. I don't know who you are, but hi, Fran, hi Kay. Let's see, hi. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I was just mentioning that after all, California is not that liberal, as we hope we are. But anyway, so I just want to give you some time to talk about call to action, whatever you are interested in, involved in right now, that you want people to know about and take some actions on.
When you said cut down the trees, my internet was just like, no, shut it all down.
Oh,
no. I guess like one thing I can say is that I'm very happy that we could have this conversation, because it's something that's been boiling inside of me. It's like the city where I live in. I've been politically active for the last 4 years, like running for office, and they know that my only issue is to protect this green space that's nearby. Of course, I have other that's the big one. It's a center of community. It has 2 redwood groves, bunch of oak trees, and from the beginning of my political activism in Berkeley, they've been dedicated to cutting it down. Knowing completely that I'm a trans person of color, and the city is like, we need reparations for the people. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to leave the park alone? Like, it's only 2.8 acres. Can you find somewhere else? No. um, we're going to allow UC Berkeley to buy a mansion for parties and events. UC Berkeley, it's the UC Regent president, their mansion for parties and events, $6.5 million. They bought a house. I'm like, okay, so you have that much money for another house for students, maybe? They're quiet. They're like, we're gonna build housing on People's Park. I'm like, okay. And it's like, there are a lot of people who are queer that are being affected by this. I have never seen so many queer people in a place where people are like, no, it's violent, there's crime, there's antagonism, it's only homeless people. Well, homeless people can be queer, and they are often. And the fact that it's not seen through an equity lens, that this is the only place in Berkeley, on this side of Berkeley, where I've seen more than 3 people who are Black being able to talk about something other than anti-Blackness, where multiple queer people can come and enjoy their presence and are accepted by a community. It's like one of the most like heartfelt and progressive, not rich communities in Berkeley that they constantly want to destroy. But I think the lessons that I've learned through the queer community is to always resist, to keep acting up, to realize that environmental rights pertain to all of us. We all have the right to public space and to a clean environment and the ability to enjoy the oxygen we breathe. And these are things that we need to protect in the future, because ecofascism, which is conservatives become more materialistic when dwindling resources such as water, land, food scarcity, when these things are less accessible, some people will want to hoard those resources for themselves. So when we do have accessible resources for the public, it's important for the public to really
We will wait for Aidan to come back because I know they will come back. Okay. All right.
I know. I should go after the just because I hate that. I should go after this just because I hate the interruptions. But I want to leave you with that, is that queer people deserve the right to public space. They deserve the right to exist openly in front of other people as they are. If we continue to have gentrification, that just takes away public space, which is a public forum available for all of us. So environmental rights are queer rights, reproductive rights are queer rights. And we have to get with it. We have to really get it together, because once these resources, they're not going to come back, especially not in a time of ecofascism. So I want to leave you with that. Only because
thank you. No, well said. Yeah, thank you, Aidan. And I hope we get to see each other in person in the future, because I actually go to the Bay Area quite often to organize. So it'll be awesome to organize with you one of these days. Yeah. So thank you so much. I don't know if Aidan can hear me, but that was a great conversation. And yeah, queer rights, environmental rights, housing rights, rights to fair wages, rights to peace, rights to live healthy lives, rights to healthcare. So yeah, let's keep fighting for each other and for everyone. So I guess on that note, I'm just gonna play the outro. Thank you so much, Aidan.